Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana and I have more books to talk about today because that's what we talk about on my channel. We talk about all the books, okay? All the books. Today's video is me introducing, I guess, a series that I will be doing on this channel. I already do this on my Instagram and it has, I get a lot of good feedback from it. So I'm going to transfer that over to the YouTubes. And that is featuring what I call under the radar books. Hold on, this sweater has like super long sleeves and I'm trying to get a little comfortable. What I mean by under the radar books are books that have, don't really have a lot of buzz about them. They may have so they don't have a lot of buzz about them, or they have maybe been out for so long that people are no longer really talking about them, especially maybe younger or newer readers. So that's what the focus is. And I think for each of these videos, I'll feature 6 books at a time. What I do on Instagram, I currently have 5 of these types of posts, but I only post about 3 books at a time. So I'm going to have a little bit more time and space, if you will, in a YouTube video. So I'm going to be doing 6 at a time. And one reason why I wanted to start this is because we are, as readers, we are constantly bombarded with new releases or the most popular books. Even with classics, you see the same classics over and over again, and that's fine because there's a reason why they've stood the test of time. And I know that on Instagram, certain books are good for the algorithm. They're algorithm friendly. And so I know that people will feature certain books to get that engagement going because they want their account to grow, which is fine. But I still like to focus on things that are not necessarily popular, but are worth your time. So I'm going to dive into some of these books today. I've got 2 5-star reads up here. All of these are 4 stars and up that I've got to talk about today. And I am excited to get into these. So let's dive into this. And what you can expect from these, moving around too much, what you can expect from these under the radar reviews are mini reviews for each of these books. And I will also link down the under the radar posts that I have on my blog that correlate with these books. So let's get into this. I'm always dancing around the house. I have a lot of energy. I have Marriage by Susan Ferrier. I believe that's how you pronounce it, Ferrier. She was a contemporary of Jane Austen. And at the time when both were writing, Susan Ferrier outsold Jane Austen. However, she just didn't stand the test of time like Jane Austen does or has. She is a Scottish writer, and Sir Walter Scott was a big fan of my girl Susan, and for good reason. So this novel, and I'm so glad that Virago has put this book back in print, and I still don't see a lot of people talking about it, but it is such a charming book. And first published in 1818. This novel is about, how am I going to say this? Because again, it's a mini review. I have my notes here, but I'm trying to keep this mini. Say mini again. Mini. So in this book, we really hyper focus in on the lives of 3 women, and all of these women are related. So we have Lady Juliana, who decided to marry for love, but she quickly gets disillusioned. She comes from a wealthy upper class English family, and she ends up marrying a Scotsman who's in the military, and she just couldn't resist that man in a uniform. And she has twins, and so she actually moves to Scotland, the Highlands of Scotland, and again, like I said, she's quickly disillusioned with her Scottish relatives, and she gives birth to twins, and she goes back to England and leaves her twins in Scotland, and the twins are raised by their Scottish side of the family. And those sisters' names are, again, I read this back in 2020, so the names have just lost me. We have Adelaide and Mary. And the mother, Lady Juliana, she's vain and narcissistic. And I don't mean like, narcissistic and narcissistic personality disorder is a term, phrase, word that is thrown about too much these days. No, this character, Lady Giuliani. I made her Italian. Giuliani. No, Lady Juliana is the prototype. And so Adelaide is very much like her mother, but Mary is the exact opposite. And this novel is really a narrative about how the marital choices, really showing how the marital choices that these women make, the mother and then the daughters, how it affects their lives. And it's really a conversation about the social and domestic lives of women during the Regency period. And the male characters, I will say, in this book are quite flat. But I think that the author did this on purpose because it's not about the men at all. It's about these women. And I think an adaptation of this would actually be really cool. So you kind of get into the male characters a little bit more. But the women in this novel are hilarious. There are 3 sisters, the Scottish aunts, that are very reminiscent of the 3 witches in Macbeth. Hysterical. This does take quite a bit of patience because Ferrier uses colloquial Scottish dialect from the Highlands. And if you're not familiar with that dialect, it can be very, very difficult to read. Oddly enough, thanks to Outlander, I understood quite a bit of it. For some reason, I picked up on the dialect thanks to Outlander. Watching the show has trained my ear to listen to it, and I would watch it with subtitles so I could actually see the spellings for some of the words that were in Scots and hear it and see it and then compute it to memory. So if you are an Outlander fan and maybe you don't want to read Outlander again, but you kind of want to be in that environment, being around the dialect of the Highlands in this book was a comfort. And this book is subtly funny. But if you have the patience to kind of dig through this book, so like I said, it's slow moving. I think it's worth it. And you don't really hear people talk about this. And again, there's a reason why at the time she was outselling Austen. She has 3 other novels that I have not been able to find in print because I would like to read more of her. And I hope Virago publishes her other 2 books. So yeah, I love the cover. Quite a bit of annotations there. Let's move on. This was not in my top 10 favorite novels video. It was, but after reading The Brothers Karamazov and A Little Life last year, this got knocked off. But it's still within the top 15. Cold Mountain by Charles Frazier. And this was a National Book Award winner back in the early 90s. And I said early 90s. No, oh Lord, 1997. 1997? I thought, how old am I? When 1997 feels like the early 90s. Cold Mountain, 1997. This has a movie. The movie's not that great, but I don't see many younger readers who have read this book. Such a shame. This book is a stunning piece of fiction. And again, well known. Because, it's received awards, it has a movie, but it's going on 30 years old, which is crazy. It's in its late 20s. If I'm going to go ahead and say this, if you're a fan of Greek mythology, if you're a fan of the Odyssey, this is really a retelling of the Odyssey. We have Inman, who is a deserter in the Confederate Army during the American Civil War, and he is on his way back home. And on his way back home to the woman he loves, Ada, he comes across so many strange characters, and the whole time you are paranoid that is this man going to get caught? What's going to happen to him as he's meandering from Virginia back to the deeper parts of the South? And like I said, he meets strange characters. There are some events that happen in this book that, even as having read this book twice already, I'm like, is he making this up? Is he dreaming? It's a bit ethereal. It's a bit lucid. But again, bearing in mind, this is an Odyssey. This is a retelling of the Odyssey. And how in the Odyssey, Odysseus comes across so many strange mythological characters, but you know that this is happening to Odysseus. You kind of have to, I guess you could assume that this is happening to Inman as well. This novel is also gorgeously written. Man, Charles Frazier writes like he's from another time. There are some really good contemporary authors from today's period, but I mean, from today, like new releases, people who are just, they're brand new authors who are, just getting their first novels released. I don't know, I'm going to go ahead and say it. People don't really write like this anymore. There are a few, but people don't really write like this before. And I think that if you were to compare the National Book Award winners, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the Man Booker Prize winners, Women's Prize for Fiction, from like the 90s back, you're going to see a stark difference between what's being awarded, what is being given awards now. A lot of what I would argue is being awarded now is it's going along with whatever is currently popular in current affairs. I said what I said, and I don't take it back. Not saying that some of those novels may not necessarily be good, but there's too much of a narrative going on. I can see the thread, and I'm like, not interested. Too much politics involved. This is just excellent fiction. He has other books. I have Verena that was given to me a couple of years ago by one of my best friends, and I plan to get to that this year, because I've never read anything else by him, but I plan to read that one in the fall because this is perfect for winter. I mean, it's called Cold Mountain, but man, this is a fantastic piece of literature, and I'm curious to know. Man, because I do plan to reread this sometime, but I have read it twice. I have not annotated it because this was when Alana annotated books. So I need to go back and annotate this because, again, there's so much imagery, so much is being alluded to. And again, you have to read it as if you're reading the Odyssey. And I wonder if I could probably draw some parallels between some of the characters that he comes across and see if they line up to some of the mythological characters that Odysseus comes across, because I did reread the Odyssey for the third time last year. I cannot rave about this enough. Again, I'm going to say it again until I'm purple in the face, and I'm going to say it for the people in the back. If you like really good writing, really good storytelling that you just don't really see being published these days, people don't really write like this anymore. You gotta read Cold Mountain. I could sing this to the heavens. You've gotta read Cold Mountain. Man, this book is good. I just got hype. Cold Mountain is fantastic. And can you believe it? It didn't make it into my top 10. It was in my top 10. Not in my top 10. The Brothers Karamazov knocked it off, but it's definitely in the top 15. Fantastic fiction. I got really excited. Every time I think about this book, I remember how good it is. I encouraged my dad to pick this book up. I was like, you gotta read Cold Mountain. He was like, you mean Brokeback Mountain? I said, no, Cold Mountain, not Brokeback Mountain. That's something else. I have a Persephone book, Persephone Classic. If you don't know about Persephone Classic or Persephone books, this is an English publisher that publishes mainly female fiction within a certain time period, mainly 20th century female fiction. They do have some male writers, but mainly female fiction that has kind of, again, fallen off the radar. They have a few noteworthy popular books, but they are publishing books that have often been that have been out of print. And so we have Mariana, I would say Mariana, because I'm an East Coaster, by Monica Dickens. And yes, she is the great granddaughter. I couldn't remember if it was two greats or one. She is the great granddaughter of Charles Dickens, and she inherited her grandfather's ability to tell a story without the meandering. Okay, she's not describing chairs for 3 pages, but this is a coming of age story. And I read this book back in 2019, and it's such a treat. This is a good story. It's just a good story. And sometimes that's what you just need. You just need a good read. That's not super deep, but still has a message. Can I get a witness? So this is a coming of age story, and our main character, Mariana, she's really referred to as Mary in this book. She is growing up, and the novel actually starts during World War II, and she's married, and where did this gnat come from? Anyway, she's married, but her husband served in the war, and you can tell that she's waiting to hear news of what happened to her husband. Something, I think a ship went down or something. What happened to her husband? Is he dead or alive? And then from that point, we get this story of her growing up, and it is so charming. Such a sweet story. And it's the perfect story to really read, I think, in the summer or the spring. And if you don't know, if you're not familiar with Persephone books, they do ship worldwide. They were not shipping worldwide in 2020, but they are back to shipping now. And I would recommend shipping directly from them. It's cheaper than trying to find them on eBay. I don't order from them often because shipping, but I have 6 of them, and I've read 5 of the 6. No, I've read 4 of the 6 that I own. Look at this. And they each have a unique end paper that is relevant to the time period in which the book was originally published or written. This is the perfect story to read in the spring and or summer because it's light and it's quick. Unlike Charles Dickens, it's light and quick, but it has substance. And again, if you like coming of age stories, side note, I should do an Instagram post and a YouTube video about the coming of age stories that I've read because I love a good coming of age story. Gotta talk about Jane Eyre and David Copperfield. Again, it still has substance because Mary is going through all the highs and lows of adolescence and then teenage years and then the adult years. She's in her 20s by the time this book ends. And the ending, which is a massive spoiler, because again, this tension that's building up, is her husband alive or dead? The ending is really tense and really emotional and excellently done. And again, Monica Dickens, it's the way that she builds the tension in the end, I was not expecting within the last few pages. And then you're like, and you might shed a couple of tears. It's excellently done. And if you like female narratives around that World War II / interwar period between the 2 world wars, highly, highly recommend. Again, it's light, it's quick, but it's got substance. Go treat yourself. We're going to go from light to not so light. This is Faces in the Water by Janet Frame. This is a New Zealand author. And, again, published by Virago Modern Classics. This was for their 40th. This was part of their 40th anniversary collection, which this collection received awards for the cover art of this collection. It is stunning. I own all of them. Slowly making my way through them, but gorgeous collection. Can you see the faces? All right, like I said, beautiful book. Really difficult topics that we're going to be diving into with this one, but this was a 5-star read for me. If you couldn't tell, my other 5-star read was Cold Mountain. All the others were 4, and all the others that I'm going to be talking about are 4s. This is a semi-autographical novel about a young woman describing her mental experience in mental hospitals. Frame herself spent 8 years total of her life being institutionalized for schizophrenia. However, it came out later, a doctor telling her you don't actually have schizophrenia. I think if she was to be diagnosed with something today, she probably would have been diagnosed with autism, high functioning autism, but she definitely would be considered what we call neurodivergent. But during this time, this is like probably I want to say this is in the 50s where this is taking place. Yeah, people got institutionalized who had no business being institutionalized, and it's really, really sad. So again, this novel, it's not a thick volume, but it is heavy. She is detailing what she experienced in these institutions. It's haunting, it's appalling, it's heartbreaking, it's intense, it's disturbing, but it's raw and it's realistic. Frame's writing is poetic. As a person who struggles with reading poetry, I can read it in a narrative type way, like in a novel. That was not well said, but you're picking up what I'm putting down. But and that just makes it even more heartbreaking in some ways, that she's so able to beautifully write about the trauma that she experienced. Again, trauma is a word that is overused, I think, in today's society, but this is some real trauma. If you're fans of the Bell Jar, I think would get on with this. Or how do you get on with a book like this? But you know what I'm saying. Like, fans of the Bell Jar would appreciate this novel. Fans of Virginia Woolf also, I think, would appreciate this because there are similar themes here. And if you are interested in narratives that highlight the institutionalization of women who really had no business being institutionalized, even if some of them really did have suffer from things like schizophrenia, the way that they're treated during this time period in the mid 20th century and back, I would highly recommend this. I think this is an important read too. And again, this is a 5-star read, and this is one of those novels that I still think about. I do plan to reread this because there's just so much imagery in here that it's so well done. So well done. I have got to read some of Janet Frame's other books. Virago has published all of them. But again, all the books are not enough time. This is a buffer. This book that I'm about to talk about is a buffer because I have another depressing read after this one. But gotta soften the blows. I have a 1940s historical romance that I think more people should be reading right now. This is good stuff. 1940s historical romance novelist Anya Seton. She wrote, she's most well known for this particular novel, Katherine. And, sorry, not 1940s, 1950s. But again, 1940s, 1950s, the historical romance novels from this time period are they just have there's something about them. They're a bit over the top. They're definitely cliche in a lot of ways, but they actually, in a lot of ways, these authors like Anya Seton, Daphne du Maurier was writing during this time. They paved the way for a lot of historical romance and a lot of historical fiction that came after that were written by women. So a lot of these are prototypes. This is also considered by many to be the benchmark for historical fiction / historical romance. So, and during its publication, it was very much raved about. So what is this? Let me get to the point. What is this? This can be considered, if you're a fan of Tudor history and Tudor historical fiction, consider this the prequel. We have Katherine, who really was not, she wasn't poor, but considered, compared to like the super wealthy, yeah, she's a plebe. She had an affair, and this is based off a true story, We don't really know much about her because during this time period, this is really medieval England. During this time period or that time period, women's lives were not really recorded. You have to kind of sift through what was written by men to kind of piece things together. So a lot of this was definitely fabricated, and there's a lot of liberties taken from the author here. But hey, it's fiction. Catherine Swynford and the Duke of Lancaster, John of Gaunt. So they had an affair, and their affair ended up directly having an effect or kind of setting the foundation for establishing the Tudor line. If you know what the Tudors are, they're insane. Okay, like, the guy, Henry VIII, who had 6 wives and beheaded 2 of them, those Tudors. Thomas Cromwell, who was, that time period. Insane. And again, much of this plot is fictionalized, but this is a fun read. It's romanticized. This is chunky. This is just under 600 pages. And it's just, if you want pure escapism, it's a little cliche a lot at a time. Some of the romance scenes are kind of cheesy, but it is just good nostalgic fun. It's just good fun. You've got cold, damp castles and elaborate gowns that are being described, and it's definitely, quite a feminine read in that way, but I enjoyed it, and I read this again in 2020. So this was good fun. And so again, if you just really want good escapism and you're interested in Tudor fiction, the prequel Tudor fiction, if you're interested in the Plantagenets, good stuff. I have some of other Anya Seton's novels that I have not read. She has another novel that takes place in medieval France, which I have not read. And again, I think another reason why I think this is a good one to dive into if you're a historical fiction fan and maybe you kind of want to venture outside of what is currently being published, is medieval fiction. Medieval English fiction is not something historical fiction that takes place in medieval England can be harder to find outside of the fantasy genre. So there's that. I have The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearne. I would say Hearne. This was written by Brian Moore, who was an Irish author. So I would say Hearne. If anybody is watching this and they're Irish, please let me know. Did I pronounce that right? Hearne? I would say Hearne. And if I'm wrong, I am just a person in the United States that has an East Coast accent. My bad. I read this book last year, and first of all, if you want to get into books that are fantastic reads but don't get a lot of hype, this is another publisher, the New York Review Books. This publisher also puts things in print. I'm shaking my table. Will either put things in print, put things on the forefront, or put things back in print that really deserve it. And this is one of them. First of all, the cover is striking, and they are known for their striking covers. Also the quality of these books is fantastic. The paper is good quality. It's nice and thick. So when you pick up one of their books, especially if it's once you get around like 300 to 400 pages, this is not that thick. It feels hefty to hold. Look at this cover. If you look, you see that this woman here is blending into this floral motif. The cover is striking. The book is depressing. So, The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearne. Again, it caught my eye because of the cover, and I wasn't really seeing any reviews about it. I wasn't really seeing too many posts about it on Instagram. I saw a few, but not too many. Again, Goodreads and Amazon, but again, not that much out there about it. This is the story about a single woman in Ireland in her 40s in the mid 20th century. And she came from a well-to-do family, but she's come down in the world. She's living alone. She's barely making ends meet. She teaches piano lessons, and she's holding on to the hope that she will one day get married and have a family of her own. And from there, yeah, this is a novel. Let me put it out there. If you like to read novels that have happy endings, this is not one of those novels. This is straight up realism. How many times do we, you hear about people who just, and this is very normal. There are things that we're like, wow, I've always hoped this would happen in my life and it just never happened. I don't really know if I consider that a spoiler. This woman's loneliness is never cured. And the older she gets and the more she realizes that her deepest desire, the biggest desire of her heart is just not going to come to fruition, she spirals into complete and utter despair. But it's realism. And she has a secret that how she copes with this. And it's really, really sad. She is a religious woman. She's Catholic. And she's praying. I mean, she's pleading with God to give her the desires of her heart. And it just doesn't happen. And this is a sad novel. If you're interested in realism in novels, this is a good one to pick up. I do think that you have to be in the right headspace to read this book. And I don't really say that often about books that I recommend, because I am one of those people who kind of just pick up and read whatever, whenever. I can compartmentalize really well, and I can read something like A Little Life and then go on about my day and be relatively unaffected by it. Like, I'm not crying. You know what I mean? Not like it didn't have an impact. I mean, it's one of my top reads of all time, but I didn't have to take mental health breaks from it, if that makes sense. I don't know. I can consume a lot of difficult content at once, but there was something about this book and the way that it was written that there were times I was like, I'm glad I'm in a good headspace, because ouch. Yeah. It's a different kind of sad than A Little Life or something like that. Again, I even read Lolita over many meals. I would eat my dinner and I'm like, wow, this is disturbing. Keep reading. And then I go on about my day. This one lingers. And this one hurts. So yeah, because it just goes back to this, harkening back to hope deferred makes the heart sick, which is a passage of scripture in the Bible. And it's true. There is just something about hoping for something, praying for something, desiring something, doing everything that you can to hope this thing comes to pass, and it just doesn't happen. And nobody wants to be alone for the rest of their lives in this way. I'm going to stop. Now I want to reread this book. Again, really tough. But if you like realism, that's as real as it gets. I hope that you enjoyed my first installment of Under the Radar books. I have many more books to talk about within this type of series, if you will. Again, this is the first 6. I've covered 15 of these books already on my Instagram, so I have many more videos coming. In the future, I'm not going to rush to get all these out, but also in the near future, I kind of wanted to go ahead and get this one out the way because I have a lot of books to review. So the next few videos that I'll be posting will all be book reviews. I've got to do Swan's Way, Mythos by Stephen Fry, Dracula, and The Hobbit. So I have quite a bit of content to get through, and I take a lot of time to flush out my book reviews. So to give myself some more time, I've got to buffer them. All right, I'm going to stop talking. I'm actually, my throat's getting dry. I've been filming for 2 hours. I am going to wrap this up. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment. Have you read any of these books? Do any of these books pique your interest? And will you be picking any of them up? I look forward to hearing in the comments. My links are down below in the description box to my Instagram and my blog. And I am done. I am going to go make dinner. Lamb burgers are coming. Yum, I love. I love a good burger. So we're doing lamb burgers. All right. End scene.